Wealth and status are the only things that matter at the Obsidian, or so the regulars thought, until a brilliant waitress broke their rules. While the world's top banking elites fumbled over a billion-dollar logic puzzle, Lydia Bennett saw the solution in the time it took to refill a glass. Sheikh Tariq Al-Fayed wasn't just looking for an investor. He was looking for a mind that could see the music in the math, and he found it in the one person everyone else chose to ignore. Prepare to watch a former prodigy turn a night of service into a masterpiece of karmic justice. The Obsidian was not merely a restaurant, it was a fortress of wealth perched on the 45th floor of the highest skyscraper in downtown Chicago. The walls were made of dark, tempered glass, the floors of imported Italian marble, and the clientele consisted exclusively of people who could buy small countries on a whim. For Lydia Bennett, the Obsidian was a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Table 7 needs a refill on the sparkling water, and for God's sake, Lydia, fix your apron. You look like a disheveled amateur. The voice belonged to Gareth, the floor manager. Gareth was a man who wore his insecurity like a cheap cologne, overpowering and unpleasant. He had slicked back hair that looked wet, and a perpetual sneer reserved specifically for Lydia. "Yes, Gareth." "Right away," Lydia murmured, keeping her eyes on the floor. She adjusted the strap of her apron, her fingers brushing against the fabric. It was clean, of course. Lydia was meticulous. But Gareth needed someone to bully, and Lydia was the easiest target. She was 26, but the exhaustion in her eyes made her look older. 2 years ago, she had been on track to receive her PhD in computational mathematics from MIT. She had been a star, a once-in-a-generation mind, according to her professors. Then came the accident. A drunk driver, an icy road, and her father's car wrapping around a telephone pole. He survived, barely, but the medical bills were a tsunami that swallowed everything. The savings, the house, and eventually, Lydia's tuition. She had dropped out to care for him, taking the job at the Obsidian because the tips were high enough to pay for his dialysis. Now, she wasn't a mathematician. She was just Lydia, Table 7. "Hey, Einstein," a voice whispered as Lydia passed the service station. It was Tiffany, another waitress. Tiffany was beautiful, vicious, and sleeping with Gareth to get the best tables. She bumped her hip against Lydia, nearly knocking the tray of crystal glasses from her hands. "Watch it," Tiffany hissed, though she had been the one to initiate contact. "The Sheikh is coming tonight. Gareth said I'm taking the lead on his table. You're on water duty. Don't speak, don't make eye contact, and definitely don't breathe near him." "I know the protocol, Tiffany," Lydia said quietly, stabilizing the tray. "Good, because if you mess this up, you won't just be fired. Gareth will make sure you never work in this city again." Lydia didn't respond. She walked out onto the floor, the hum of conversation washing over her. The room was filled with the titans of industry. At table 4 sat Arthur Pendleton, the CEO of Omnicorp, a man known for ruthless takeovers and a laugh that sounded like a barking seal. He was currently berating a junior associate for wearing the wrong shade of blue. Lydia moved like a ghost, filling glasses, removing plates, her mind drifting to equations. To cope with the boredom and the humiliation, she often calculated the volume of wine left in a bottle based on the angle of the pour, or estimated the tip percentage based on the curvature of a patron's smile. It was the only way to keep her brain from atrophy. But tonight, the air felt different. The tension was palpable. The kitchen staff had been prepping for 3 days. Security had swept the room twice. Sheikh Tariq Al-Fayed was coming. The Sheikh was not just royalty, he was a visionary investor who controlled a sovereign wealth fund worth nearly $1 trillion. He was looking for a partner for his new Project Horizon, a renewable energy initiative that would revolutionize the global power grid. Every CEO in the room, including Arthur Pendleton, was there to pitch to him. "Clear the aisle," Gareth snapped into his earpiece. "He's in the elevator." Lydia retreated to the shadows near the service station, clutching a pitcher of water like a shield. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. The room went silent. Sheikh Tariq walked in. He was younger than Lydia expected, perhaps in his mid-30s, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than Lydia's parents' house. He had dark, intelligent eyes that scanned the room, not with arrogance, but with a bored precision. He was flanked by 2 bodyguards and a severe-looking woman with a tablet, his advisor, Miss Kincaid. Gareth practically sprinted over, bowing so low it looked painful. "Your Highness, welcome to the Obsidian. We have prepared the private alcove for you." Tariq waved a hand dismissively. "No alcoves. I wish to sit in the center. I want to see the people who wish to take my money." Gareth froze, panic flickering in his eyes. "Of course, Your Highness. Right this way." He led the Sheikh to the prime table in the center of the room. Tiffany was already there, posing with a menu, a practiced smile plastered on her face. "Water," Gareth hissed at Lydia as he passed. "Now." Lydia took a breath, smoothed her apron, and stepped into the lion's den. Lydia approached the table with the grace of a dancer. She poured the water for the Sheikh and Miss Kincaid without a splash, placing the crystal glasses down silently. Sheikh Tariq didn't look at her. He was busy looking at Arthur Pendleton, who had immediately approached the table, uninvited. "Your Highness," Arthur boomed, extending a hand. "Arthur Pendleton, Omnicorp. It is an honor. I trust your flight was smooth." Tariq didn't shake the hand. He merely gestured to the empty chair opposite him. "Mr. Pendleton, please sit. And the rest of you." He raised his voice slightly, addressing the room. "Mr. Grant from Apex, Mr. Lowe from Sterling Finance. Pull up chairs." It was unprecedented. A public meeting. The 3 most powerful CEOs in the room scrambled to sit around the Sheikh's table like schoolboys called to the principal's office. Lydia tried to back away, but Gareth caught her eye and made a subtle stay motion. He wanted her there to refill glasses instantly, so the flow of conversation wouldn't be interrupted by waiting. She stood 3 feet back, a silent statue. "Gentlemen," Tariq started, his voice calm but commanding. "You all sent me proposals, thick binders full of projections, graphs, and promises of 200% returns. Omnicorp guarantees it," Arthur said quickly. "I do not care about returns," Tariq said, shocking them. "I have enough money to buy God if he were for sale. I care about vision, and I care about details." Tariq reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folded piece of parchment. It looked ancient, contrasting sharply with the modern glass table. He unfolded it. It wasn't text. It was a grid, a chaotic, swirling pattern of numbers, geometric shapes, and what looked like musical notations. "This," Tariq said, sliding the paper to the center of the table, "is the encryption key for the server that holds the blueprints for Project Horizon. My late grandfather designed the security protocols based on an old Bedouin logic riddle, combined with modern cryptography." The CEOs stared at it blankly. "I have forgotten the password," Tariq lied. The glint in his eye gave it away. "Or rather, I am testing you. The man who can solve this sequence and give me the next 3 numbers in the series proves he has the mind to handle my technology. The investment is yours." Arthur Pendleton scoffed. "A puzzle? Your Highness, I have a team of analysts at MIT. "No teams," Tariq cut him off. "Right here, right now. You are the captains of industry. Surely you can solve a simple logic problem." The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Arthur pulled out a gold fountain pen and squinted at the paper. Well, it's obviously a Fibonacci sequence overlaid with... Is that Greek? It's not Greek, Mr. Grant muttered. It looks like a prime number cipher. Lydia, standing silently with her water pitcher, felt a pull. She couldn't help herself. She leaned forward just an inch, narrowing her eyes at the paper. From her angle, the paper was upside down, but to a mathematician, patterns didn't care about orientation. She saw the grid. She saw the swirling numbers. 1, 1, 2, 3. Arthur was right. It started as Fibonacci. But then it broke. 5, 8, 13. But the next number was replaced by a symbol, a sharp note from sheet music. Then a 21. Then a flat note. Her brain, starved of intellectual challenge for 2 years, ignited. It wasn't just math, it was harmonics. The numbers corresponded to frequencies. The geometric shapes dictated the interval. It was beautiful. It's impossible. Arthur slammed his hand down after 5 minutes. This is nonsense. It's a trick. There is no solution. There is always a solution, Tariq said softly, disappointment clouding his face. Is this the best Western capitalism has to offer? Men who give up when the answer isn't printed on a balance sheet? I need a computer, Mr. Lowe argued. Nobody can do this in their head. My grandfather did, Tariq said coldly, while riding a camel. The tension was razor-sharp. Gareth was sweating profusely near the kitchen door. This was going badly. If the Sheikh left unhappy, the restaurant would lose its prestige. Tiffany, sensing the mood, decided to try and charm the situation. She stepped forward with a bottle of wine. Perhaps some Pinot Noir to help the thinking process, Your Highness? She leaned in too low. The bottle slipped from her sweaty palm. Crash. Red wine exploded across the white tablecloth, splashing onto Arthur's grey suit and spotting the edge of the Sheikh's cuff. The room gasped. You idiot! Arthur roared, jumping up. Look what you've done! Tiffany froze, her face pale. Gareth was already charging across the room, his face purple with rage. I am so sorry. The bottle was wet, Tiffany stammered. Get out, Gareth hissed, grabbing Tiffany by the arm. Get out of my sight. He turned to the Sheikh, bowing frantically. Your Highness, 1,000 apologies. We will comp the meal. I will fire her immediately. It is just wine, Tariq said, unbothered, dabbing his cuff with a napkin. But the mood is broken. Gentlemen, I think we are done here. Clearly none of you have the capacity I am looking for. He reached out to take the parchment back. Lydia stepped forward to clean the spill. She placed fresh napkins over the wine stain. As her hand moved near the parchment, her eyes locked onto the sequence again. She knew the answer. It was screaming at her. And she knew that if she stayed silent, she would be wiping tables for the rest of her life. She would never pay off her father's debt. She would fade away into the grey background of The Help. She looked at the Sheikh. He looked bored, ready to leave. It's 144, Lydia said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the silent, terrified room, it sounded like a gunshot. Gareth froze. His hand was still gripping Tiffany's arm. He slowly turned his head to look at Lydia as if she had just grown a second head. Excuse me, Gareth whispered, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. Arthur Pendleton looked at Lydia with pure disgust. Did the water girl just speak? Lydia's heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Her palms were sweating. Every instinct she had developed over the last 2 years screamed at her to apologize and run. Don't be seen. Don't be heard. But she looked at the paper again. She was right. She knew she was right. The next number, Lydia said, her voice gaining a fraction more strength, though her hands shook. It's 144, followed by a C-sharp minor, followed by 377. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Gareth marched over, grabbing Lydia's shoulder with a grip that would leave a bruise. "Lydia, get to the kitchen, now. You are fired. You are done." He looked at the Sheikh, a desperate, oily smile on his face. "Please forgive her, Your Highness. The staff, they sometimes forget their place. Wait." The single word from Sheikh Tariq stopped Gareth in his tracks. Tariq didn't look at Gareth. He was looking at Lydia. For the first time, he actually saw her. He saw the intelligence in her eyes that the uniform couldn't hide. "Let her go," Tariq commanded. Gareth released her instantly, stepping back. Tariq leaned forward, resting his chin on his clasped hands. "You said 144. And a musical note?" "Yes, Your Highness," Lydia said, clutching her serving tray to her chest. "That is ridiculous," Arthur scoffed. "It's a math problem, not a piano lesson. She's just guessing numbers she saw on a menu." "Explain," Tariq said, ignoring Arthur. He gestured to the paper. "Show me how you got there." Lydia hesitated. She looked at Gareth, whose eyes promised murder if she messed this up. She looked at Tiffany, who was watching with a mix of shock and jealousy. Lydia set her tray down on a side table. She walked to the Sheikh's table. She picked up the gold pen Arthur had discarded. "May I?" she asked. Tariq nodded. Lydia flipped the paper over to the blank side. Her hand moved quickly, drawing a spiral. "The sequence isn't just Fibonacci," Lydia explained, her voice finding the rhythm of a lecture, the way she used to speak in the halls of MIT. "It's the Fibonacci sequence, mapped against the chromatic scale of Western music, specifically utilizing the intervals found in Bach's The Art of Fugue." She wrote out the equation. Fn 1 observen en 2 talas. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Normally, 13 follows 8, but in your puzzle, the 13 is replaced by a symbol. That symbol is a semiquaver rest. In the harmonic series you're using, that rest represents a multiplier of the previous prime. But it's inverted. She drew a quick graph. The pattern oscillates. Math, music, math, music. The numbers you left blank are the convergence points where the golden ratio, phi, meets the acoustic frequency of the note. She looked up. Arthur's mouth was hanging slightly open. "So," Lydia continued, pointing to the end of the line, "the math gives you 144. The harmonic interval requires a minor third lift, C-sharp minor, and the final integer returns to the sequence, 3 lambs set into 7. She capped the pen and set it down. "Sir." Tariq picked up the paper. He stared at her calculation. He stared at the answer key he had in his own pocket, a digital file on his phone that only he had seen. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. It wasn't the polite smile of a diplomat. It was the genuine grin of a man who had finally found someone who spoke his language. "Ms. Kincaid," Tariq said without looking away from Lydia. "Check the key." Ms. Kincaid tapped her tablet. She looked at Lydia, then back at the tablet, her eyebrows shooting up into her hairline. "It is an exact match, Your Highness. To the decimal." Tariq laughed, a loud, booming laugh that echoed off the glass walls. Incredible, absolutely incredible. He stood up. He walked around the table and stood in front of Lydia. He was tall, imposing, but his eyes were warm. "What is your name?" "Lydia, sir." "Lydia Bennett." "Well, Lydia Bennett, you just humiliated 3 men who control half the global economy." Arthur Pendleton turned a shade of red that bordered on purple. "Now see here. She probably saw the answer key. She's a waitress. It's a trick." "Sit down, Arthur," Tariq snapped, his voice changing from warm to icy in a split second. "You had an hour. She had 10 seconds while pouring water. The only trick here is how you convinced your board of directors you are competent." Arthur slumped back into his chair, defeated. "Lydia," Tariq said, turning back to her, "what on earth is a mathematician of your caliber doing serving water in this place?" Lydia's shoulders slumped. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the crushing reality of her life. "Life is complicated, Your Highness. Medical bills, family. The degree had to wait." Tariq nodded slowly. "I see." "Lydia," Gareth interrupted, stepping forward again, trying to regain control of the narrative. "While that was a lovely party trick, we really must get back to service. Table 10 is waiting. I'm sure His Highness doesn't want to be bothered by your sob story." Tariq held up a hand. "Gareth, is it?" "Yes, Your Highness." Gareth beamed. "You are fired." The room went dead silent again. I beg your pardon?" Gareth squeaked. "You are incompetent," Tariq said calmly. "You treat your staff like cattle. You lack vision. And you tried to silence the smartest person in the room. I don't do business with establishments run by tyrants." He turned to Miss Kincaid. "By the restaurant." "Sir?" Miss Kincaid asked, her stylus hovering. "Buy the building. Buy the restaurant. Make an offer the owners cannot refuse. I want the deed in an hour." "Yes, Your Highness," she said, tapping furiously. Tariq turned back to Lydia. "Lydia, take off that apron." "Sir?" Lydia asked, confused. "I said take it off. You don't work for Gareth anymore. You don't work for the Obsidian." "But I need this job," Lydia said, panic rising. "My father." "You have a new job," Tariq said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a black business card embossed with gold Arabic calligraphy. "I need a lead analyst for Project Horizon, someone who understands the math of the universe. The starting salary is $250,000 a year, plus bonuses, and full medical coverage for your family." Lydia stared at the card. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Tariq smiled, "and then sit down and have dinner with me. I believe Mr. Pendleton was just leaving." Arthur Pendleton gathered his things, humiliated, and stormed out, followed by the other stunned CEOs. Lydia untied her apron. She let it fall to the marble floor. It landed with a soft sigh, symbolizing the end of 2 years of misery. She sat down in the chair opposite the Sheikh. But the story didn't end there. Because while Lydia had solved the puzzle, she hadn't yet solved the mystery of why the Sheikh was really in Chicago. And Gareth, now unemployed and humiliated, wasn't going to let this go without a fight. He was making a phone call in the alleyway behind the kitchen, calling a man named Silas, a corporate saboteur who specialized in ruining Cinderella stories. Lydia thought she had won the lottery. She didn't realize she had just placed a target on her back. The next morning, Lydia's life transformed. She wasn't waking up at 4 a.m. to catch the bus to the restaurant. A town car was waiting outside her modest apartment block in the suburbs. Her neighbors peeked through their blinds as the driver held the door open for her. Inside the car sat Ms. Kincaid. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," Kincaid said, not looking up from her tablet. "Your father has been transferred to St. Jude's private wing. His dialysis schedule has been prepaid for the next 5 years." Lydia choked back tears. Thank you. I haven't even done any work yet." "The Sheikh invests in people, not just projects," Kincaid said, finally looking up with a rare, soft smile. "Don't disappoint him." They arrived at the Al Fayed Global Offices, a sleek glass building that rivaled the one housing the Obsidian. Lydia was given an office, a laptop worth more than her car, and a stack of files regarding Project Horizon. The work was exhilarating. It was complex, high-level energy distribution mathematics. Lydia felt like a musician who had been banned from playing, finally given a grand piano. She worked for 12 hours straight, forgetting to eat. But in the shadows, the gears of revenge were turning. Gareth was sitting in a dim dive bar, nursing a cheap beer. Across from him sat a man who looked like a lawyer, but smelled like smoke. This was not Silas. That name was forbidden, but a man named Victor, an associate of the disgraced Arthur Pendleton. "You say she's a fraud?" Victor asked. "She's a college dropout," Gareth spat. "She didn't solve that puzzle. She was cleaning the room earlier. She must have found a cheat sheet the Sheikh dropped. She's a con artist." "Pendleton wants her out," Victor said smoothly. "If Project Horizon succeeds with her math, Omnicorp loses billions. We need to discredit her, publicly, and we need to make the Sheikh look like a fool for hiring a waitress." "I have her personnel file," Gareth grinned, sliding a manila envelope across the sticky table. "It has discrepancies, and I planted something in her locker before I left last night." "Perfect," Victor smiled. "Tomorrow is the press conference where Tariq announces the project. That's when we strike." Back at the office, Lydia was staring at a discrepancy in the Project Horizon data. The numbers Tariq had given her, the ones from the puzzle, were the key, but they didn't fit the current grid infrastructure. "Something is wrong," she muttered to herself. She typed in a simulation. If they turned on the grid with these parameters, it wouldn't just work, it would overload. It would cause a blackout across the entire Midwest. Was the Sheikh wrong? Or was the data she was given tampered with? She tried to call Tariq, but his security blocked the call. "The Sheikh is in preparation for the press conference. He cannot be disturbed." Lydia looked at the clock. The conference was in 2 hours. If she didn't stop him from activating the prototype during the demo, it would be a disaster. She grabbed her coat and ran. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel was packed. Cameras from every major news network were trained on the stage. Sheikh Tariq stood at the podium, looking regal and confident. Behind him was a massive screen displaying the Project Horizon logo. Arthur Pendleton was in the front row, looking smug. He knew what was coming. Gareth was standing in the back, recording on his phone, waiting for the fireworks. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tariq began, "today we usher in a new era of clean energy, a system designed by the most brilliant minds, led by my new chief analyst, Lydia Bennett." He gestured to the side of the stage. Lydia wasn't there. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "She must be shy," Tariq joked, though a flicker of worry crossed his face. "Regardless, we will proceed with the live demonstration." He reached for a large, futuristic lever on the podium. "Stop!" The doors at the back of the room burst open. Lydia ran in, out of breath, her hair wild. Security guards moved to intercept her. "Let her through!" Tariq commanded. Lydia scrambled up the stairs to the stage. "Don't pull it! The harmonic frequency. It's been altered." Arthur Pendleton stood up. "This woman is unstable. She's clearly overwhelmed by the job." Victor, the lawyer, stepped forward, holding a microphone. "Your Highness, before you listen to her, you should know that Ms. Bennett was fired from her university for academic fraud. We have the documents right here." He waved a forged letter in the air. The cameras flashed blindingly. "She's a fraud," Gareth shouted from the back. "She stole money from the restaurant tips." The crowd gasped. The narrative was shifting instantly. Lydia looked at Tariq. She saw doubt in his eyes. She was a waitress yesterday. Was this all a mistake? "Tariq," Lydia said, using his first name, ignoring the cameras. "I don't care about them. Look at the numbers. The third integer in the sequence. It's not 3177 anymore. Someone changed it to 376 in the mainframe." Tariq looked at her. "That is impossible. The system is encrypted." "Check it," she pleaded. If you pull that lever with a 376 integer, the feedback loop will blow the transformer. You won't just fail, you'll hurt people." "She's lying to cover her incompetence," Arthur yelled. "Pull the lever. Show us the technology." It was a standoff. On one side, the establishment, the CEOs, the lawyers, the facts, on paper, claiming Lydia was a fraud. On the other side, the waitress with the desperate eyes. Tariq looked at Arthur. He looked at Gareth. Then he looked at Lydia. He remembered the puzzle. He remembered how she saw the music in the math. "Ms. Kincaid," Tariq said quietly, "run a diagnostic on integer 3. "Sir, that will take 5 minutes. The networks are live." "Do it!" Tariq roared. The room waited in breathless silence. Arthur Pendleton began to sweat. Victor tried to slip away, but the bodyguards blocked the exit. 5 minutes passed. "Sir," Ms. Kincaid's voice trembled over the speaker system. "The integer was manually altered at 4 a.m. this morning. Access came from an Omnicorp IP address." The cameras swung to Arthur Pendleton. "And," Kincaid continued, "Ms. Bennett is correct. If we had activated, the surge would have been catastrophic." Tariq turned to Arthur. "You tried to sabotage my grid, to kill my project." Arthur turned pale. It was a corporate stress test. I didn't think." "Arrest him," Tariq said to the police officers providing security. As Arthur was dragged away shouting, and Gareth tried to sneak out, only to be tripped by a gleeful Ms. Kincaid, Tariq turned to Lydia. "You saved me," he said, his voice soft, intimate, in front of the millions watching. "Again." Lydia smiled, shaking. "I just did the math." The chaos of the press conference eventually subsided, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the noise. The flashing cameras, the shouting reporters, and the frantic police sirens had faded, replaced by the distant, rhythmic hum of the city below. The live stream of Lydia storming the stage had already garnered 10 million views globally. The internet was ablaze with headlines calling her the math whiz waitress and the girl who saved the grid. But Lydia didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a wire stripped of its insulation, exposed, raw, and vibrating with residual adrenaline. 2 hours after the police had escorted a handcuffed Arthur Pendleton from the building, Lydia sat on the private balcony of the Sheikh's penthouse suite atop the Grand Hotel. She was wrapped in a thick cashmere blanket that cost more than her car, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkled like a vast, complex circuit board, a grid of energy that she had just helped protect. The glass door behind her slid open with a soft hiss. Sheikh Tariq stepped out into the cold night air. He had shed the armor of his public persona. The tailored jacket was gone, his tie was undone, and the top buttons of his white dress shirt were loosened. He didn't look like the titan of industry who controlled $1 trillion fund. He looked like a man who had just walked through a minefield and survived. He held 2 steaming mugs in his hands. "Chamomile," he said softly, extending one towards her. "My grandmother swore it could calm a sandstorm. I imagine it might have some effect on a viral internet sensation." Lydia took the mug, her fingers brushing against his. Her hands were still trembling, the porcelain rattling ever so slightly against the saucer. "I didn't mean to make a scene, Tariq. I didn't want the cameras. I saw the numbers." "You didn't make a scene, Lydia. You made history," Tariq said, moving to lean against the balcony railing beside her. He looked out at the city, his profile illuminated by the glow of the streets below. "You saved my reputation. You saved the project. And, in all likelihood, you saved the lives of my engineers, who would have been standing next to that transformer when it blew." He turned his gaze from the horizon to her. The intensity in his dark eyes made Lydia's breath hitch in her throat. "Why did you do it?" he asked, his voice low and searching. "After everything? After the way people like Arthur treated you? After the way my own staff, Gareth, treated you? You owed us nothing. You could have let it fail. You could have walked away and let them drown in their own arrogance." Lydia looked down at the swirling steam rising from her tea. She thought about the last 2 years, the humiliation, the invisible hours, the way people looked through her as if she were made of glass. "Math doesn't lie, Tariq," she said, her voice finding strength in the truth. "People lie. Gareth lied to save his ego. Arthur lied to save his stock price. But the equation is pure. If I see an error, I have to fix it. It's not about them. It's not even about me. It's about the truth. If you respect the math, you can't let it be used to hurt people." Tariq fell silent, absorbing her words. He seemed to be re-evaluating everything he thought he knew about strength. "My grandfather used to say that," Tariq murmured, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "He said that honor is doing the right thing when no one is watching. But you did the right thing when everyone was watching, and when the most powerful men in the room were screaming at you to stop." He reached into his trouser pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was the original parchment, the cipher from the restaurant, the puzzle that had started it all. "You know," he began, unfolding the paper with reverence, "I came to Chicago looking for a partner, a business partner. I have boardrooms full of advisors who tell me what I want to hear. I have analysts who are terrified to contradict me because I sign their checks." He took a step closer to her, closing the physical distance between them. The cold wind whipped around them, but the heat radiating from him was palpable. "When you ran up those stairs today," Tariq said, his voice dropping an octave, intimate and rough with emotion, "I wasn't worried about the project. I wasn't worried about the stock market. I was terrified the security guards would hurt you." Lydia looked up, meeting his eyes. The air between them felt charged, electric, heavy with unspoken possibilities. "Lydia, I don't want you to just be my lead analyst," Tariq stated, the conviction in his voice absolute. "I want you to be my partner, in everything. I have spent my life surrounded by people who say yes to my money. You are the first person to say no to my face because you knew I was wrong. I need that. I need you." "Tariq," Lydia whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I'm a waitress who couldn't afford to finish her degree. You are you. We are from different worlds." "You are the woman who solved the Sheikh's puzzle," he corrected her, stepping close enough that she could smell the sandalwood and cedar of his cologne. "Degrees are just paper, Lydia. Intelligence is innate. And courage? Courage cannot be taught." He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment, before he gently brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek. His touch was warm, grounding. He leaned in, his eyes searching hers for permission. But before the moment could resolve into the kiss that hung suspended in the air, a vibration shattered the mood. Lydia's phone buzzed violently on the glass table where she had set it down. She pulled away, flustered, her face flushing hot. She grabbed the phone, ready to silence it, but the caller ID stopped her cold. St. Jude's Hospital, critical care wing. The blood drained from her face. Her father. "It's the hospital," she gasped, the romantic tension evaporating instantly, replaced by a cold spike of terror. "It's my father." "Answer it," Tariq commanded, his demeanor shifting instantly from suitor to protector. Lydia's fingers fumbled as she swiped the screen. "Hello? This is Lydia." She listened for a moment, her eyes widening. She grabbed the railing for support. "What? Are you sure?" Okay, I'm coming. I'm coming right now." She hung up, looking at Tariq with wide, bewildered eyes. "The doctor. He said I need to come immediately." "The car is downstairs," Tariq said, already moving toward the door. "I'm driving." "You don't have to. I am coming," he stated, leaving no room for argument. "We are in this together, remember?" The drive to St. Jude's was a blur of city lights and terrified silence. Lydia gripped the door handle, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Tariq drove with precision and speed, his hand occasionally resting on the console near hers, a silent offer of support. When they burst into the critical care waiting room, the scene was not what Lydia expected. She had steeled herself for a crash cart, for a flat line, for the end. Instead, she found Dr. Aris standing outside room 304, holding a clipboard and looking utterly baffled. "Lydia," Dr. Aris said, looking up as they approached. "You got here fast." Is he okay?" Lydia choked out, breathless. "He's more than okay," Dr. Aris said, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe his own words. "Lydia, he's awake, fully awake. The swelling has subsided significantly. It's remarkable." Lydia let out a sob of relief, her knees buckling. Tariq caught her by the elbow, steadying her. "But that's not the strangest part," the doctor continued, lowering his voice. "He's been agitating to see you, and he's asking for a pen. He keeps muttering about, a bird?" Lydia frowned, wiping her tears. "A bird? He keeps asking for the falcon," Dr. Aris said. Tariq froze. His grip on Lydia's arm tightened reflexively. "What did you say?" Tariq asked, his voice sharp. "The falcon," the doctor repeated. He said, "Tell the falcon I found the missing variable." Tariq's face went pale. He stepped forward, pushing past the doctor's confusion. "Let us in." They entered the dimly lit room. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors was steady, strong. Robert Bennett was propped up in the bed. He looked frail, his skin pale and papery, worn down by the stroke and the months of coma. But his eyes, the same intelligent, piercing hazel eyes that Lydia possessed, were open and alert. "Dad?" Lydia whispered, rushing to the bedside. Robert turned his head slowly. A weak, trembling smile broke across his face. "Lydia, my smart girl, you look tired. Have you been eating?" "I'm fine, Dad. I'm fine," she cried, taking his hand and pressing it to her cheek. "I thought I lost you." "Not yet," Robert rasped. "The equation isn't balanced yet." He shifted his gaze, looking past Lydia to the figure standing in the shadows of the doorway. Robert squinted, his brow furrowing. Then his eyes widened in shock. "Tariq?" Robert whispered, his voice barely audible. "No, you're too young. It can't be." Tariq stepped into the light. He looked at the frail man in the bed with an expression of absolute awe, mixed with confusion. "I am Tariq Al-Fayed," the Sheikh said, his voice trembling with reverence. "I am the grandson of Omar Al-Fayed." Robert let out a wheezy, dry laugh that turned into a cough. "Omar, the old desert fox. I told him that binary encryption wouldn't hold up against quantum computing. He never listened to the pawn structure." Lydia looked between her father and the Sheikh, utterly stunned. The room seemed to spin. "Dad, what are you talking about? You know the Al-Fayed family?" "Know them?" Robert coughed again, squeezing Lydia's hand. "Lydia, who do you think taught me the harmonic sequence you used to solve that puzzle? I didn't learn it at university. I wrote the foundational theorem for it with Omar in 1995. Tariq looked thunderstruck. He walked to the foot of the bed, gripping the rail. "Robert, R.J. Bennett! You are R.J. Bennett?" "That's me," Robert smiled weakly. My grandfather wrote to an R.J. Bennett every week for 20 years, Tariq said, his voice thick with emotion. He kept the letters in a cedar box on his desk. He called R.J. Bennett the Falcon of the West. He said you were the only mind in the Western world worth talking to. He said you were the only man who could beat him at chess without looking at the board. He beat me more often than I beat him, Robert admitted softly. But the letters stopped, Tariq said. 5 years ago. My grandfather was heartbroken. He thought you had died. He spent years looking for you. Robert looked down at the hospital sheets, shame coloring his pale cheeks. I didn't die. I just failed. Dad, what do you mean? Lydia asked softly. I lost the money, Lydia, Robert whispered, tears forming in his eyes. The bad investments, the house. I couldn't protect you. I couldn't pay for your school. I was ashamed. I didn't want my old friend, the great Omar Al-Fayed, to know I had become a pauper. I didn't want him to know I was nothing. You were never nothing, Lydia said fiercely, gripping his hand tighter. You were the Falcon, Tariq said, stepping to the side of the bed. He reached out and placed his hand over Robert's. My grandfather died 2 years ago. On his deathbed, he gave me the puzzle. The one Lydia solved. Tariq looked at Lydia, and then back to Robert, the realization washing over him like a wave. He told me, Tariq continued, his voice breaking, that the solution would only be found by someone who understood the music of the spheres. He wasn't testing the CEOs, Robert. He wasn't testing the bankers. He was looking for you, or someone you taught. The silence in the room was profound. The circle had closed. It wasn't luck that had brought Lydia to that table. It wasn't just genius. It was legacy. It was the echo of a friendship between two brilliant men, spanning continents and decades, finally realized in their children. Lydia looked at Tariq, tears streaming down her face. She realized now why the math had sung to her. It was her father's song. He would have been so proud, Tariq said softly to Lydia, that the daughter of the Falcon was the one to solve his final riddle. I think, Robert whispered, looking at the way Tariq looked at his daughter, that the riddle was just the beginning. Lydia squeezed her father's hand and then reached out to take Tariq's. In that sterile hospital room, amidst the beeping machines, 3 lives that had been separated by pride, tragedy, and distance were finally knotted together. But the story wasn't over. They had won the battle, but the war for the future and the launch of the project that would change the world was just beginning. And now, they would face it as a family. 6 months had passed since the night the glass tower of the Obsidian had nearly crumbled under the weight of corporate sabotage. The physical structure of the skyscraper remained the same, piercing the Chicago clouds like a needle of steel and ambition. But the soul of the building had been completely rewritten. The sign above the double doors no longer read, "The Obsidian." It now displayed a sleek, backlit inscription in brushed steel. The Bennett Fayard Institute for Mathematics, where tables had once been reserved for the arrogant elite to eat $300 steaks, rows of holographic workstations now stood. The kitchen, once a dungeon of verbal abuse under Gareth's tyranny, had been converted into a state-of-the-art server room, humming with the cool blue light of the world's most advanced processors. It was a sanctuary for the gifted, the overlooked, and the brilliant minds that society had forgotten, just as it had once forgotten Lydia. Tonight, however, the workstations were cleared away. The top floor had been transformed for a private gala. The air smelled of expensive jasmine and anticipation. Lydia Bennett stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the sprawling grid of Chicago. She wore a gown of deep midnight blue velvet that caught the light like the night sky. It was elegant, commanding, and miles away from the stained apron she used to wear. Yet, as she stared at her reflection in the glass, a ghost of her old anxiety fluttered in her chest. "You are calculating the structural integrity of the glass again, aren't you?" The voice was low, amused, and instantly calming. Lydia turned to see Sheikh Tariq approaching. He looked devastating in a tuxedo, the sharp lines of the suit softening the rugged intelligence of his features. He didn't carry himself with the distant arrogance of a royal anymore. At least, not with her. With her, he was just Tariq. "I'm not calculating the glass," Lydia lied, a small smile touching her lips. "I'm calculating the probability of Project Horizon failing in front of the 50 ambassadors waiting in the lobby." Tariq stepped up beside her, handing her a flute of sparkling cider. He remembered she didn't drink alcohol when she was nervous. "The probability is 0, Lydia. The math is perfect. I know this because you wrote it." "I wrote the code," she whispered, her fingers tightening around the glass. "But the grid goes live in 15 minutes. Real-world application is different from a simulation. If the harmonic resonance is off by even a fraction, then we fix it," Tariq said simply. He turned to face her, blocking out the city lights. "We fix it together. That is what we do. You find the variables I miss, and I fund the solutions you dream up. You two are going to bore the guests to death if you keep flirting in calculus." The new voice came from the entrance of the server room. Lydia's face lit up. Robert Bennett rolled his wheelchair into the room, flanked by Ms. Kincaid. He looked nothing like the frail, grey man who had been wasting away in a hospital bed 6 months ago. His colour had returned, his eyes were sharp and mischievous, and he was wearing a suit that Tariq had personally commissioned for him. Though his legs were still recovering their strength, his mind was sharper than it had been in decades. "Dad!" Lydia breathed, rushing over to him. "You're supposed to be resting until the presentation." "Resting is for people who don't have a global energy grid to launch," Robert scoffed, though he patted her hand affectionately. He tapped the tablet resting on his lap. "Besides, I had to double-check your work on the tertiary cooling logs. You missed a decimal point in the redundancy protocol." Lydia's jaw dropped in mock outrage. "I did not. That decimal was placed for a logarithmic slide." "Likely story," Robert winked at Tariq. "She gets that stubbornness from her mother. Never admits when the equation needs balancing." Tariq laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. "I have learned that lesson well, Robert. I don't argue with her about the math anymore. I just nod and sign the checks." Ms. Kincaid stepped forward, checking her watch. "Sir, Ms. Bennett, the dignitaries are seated in the observation deck. The global uplink is ready. It is time." The playful atmosphere evaporated, replaced by the electric charge of history in the making. This was it. The culmination of sleepless nights, of fighting legal battles against Omnicorp, of proving to the world that a waitress and a Bedouin heir could change the planet. "Ready?" Tariq asked, offering Lydia his arm. Lydia took a deep breath. She looked at her father, who gave her a resolute nod. She looked at the man who had saved her life. "Ready?" she said. They walked out onto the observation deck. A hush fell over the room as the Sheikh and his lead analyst took the stage. Behind them was a screen the size of a cinema display, currently showing a dark map of the world. Tariq spoke briefly, his charisma holding the room captive, but he quickly ceded the floor to Lydia. She stepped to the podium, her heart hammering against her ribs. But the moment she began to speak about frequencies, integers and energy flow, the fear vanished. This was her language. "Activate Phase 1, Lydia commanded. On the screen, lights began to flicker on. A web of glowing green lines started in Chicago, shooting out across the Midwest, then arcing over the ocean to Europe and the Middle East. It was beautiful, a visual representation of clean, limitless power. The room erupted in polite applause, but Lydia's eyes were glued to the telemetry data running on a side monitor. Stable. Efficient. Perfect. Phase 2, she ordered. The grid expanded. The applause grew louder. It was working. They had done it. And now, Tariq said, stepping back up to the microphone, his voice echoing slightly. For the final calibration, a sequence designed to ensure the stability of our future. Lydia frowned. Final calibration? She whispered to him, away from the mic. Tariq, we didn't discuss a final calibration. The sequence is complete. Trust me, he murmured, his eyes shining with a secret light. Watch the screen. Lydia turned. The green lines on the massive map began to shift. They detached from the geographical borders and started to swirl. It wasn't a glitch. It was controlled. The energy nodes were moving in a pattern she recognized instantly. It was a Fibonacci spiral, the golden ratio, the very same mathematical principle she had used to solve the puzzle on the day they met. The spiral tightened, the nodes glowing brighter and brighter until they converged in the center of the Atlantic Ocean. But they didn't stop there. The lights rearranged themselves, forming distinct, blocky shapes against the darkness of the map. Letters, M-A-R-R-Y-M-E. The room went dead silent. The ambassadors, the engineers, the press, everyone froze. Lydia's hands flew to her mouth. The telemetry data on her side monitor was forgotten. The only data that mattered was the message burning in 10-foot-tall letters on the screen. Tariq turned to her. He didn't look like a billionaire investor now. He looked like a man risking everything on a single variable. He dropped to one knee. The gasp from the crowd was audible, but Lydia didn't hear it. Her world had narrowed down to the man kneeling before her. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black velvet box. He opened it. Inside sat a ring, unlike anything the world of high fashion had ever seen. It wasn't a diamond. It was a band of dark, lustrous platinum holding a stone that looked like a piece of the night sky. Black, but flecked with iridescent geometry. "It is a meteorite," Tariq said, his voice trembling slightly. "Cut into a perfect dodecahedron, stardust and geometry, because that is what you are to me, Lydia. You are the logic that makes sense of my chaos, and the miracle that fell into my lap when I least expected it." Lydia was crying now, silent tears tracking through her makeup. "Lydia Bennett," Tariq continued, "you solved the puzzle of the energy crisis. You unlocked the legacy of my grandfather. But you are the only mystery I want to spend the rest of my life exploring. I don't want a business partner anymore. I want a wife. Will you calculate a future with me?" Lydia looked at the ring. She looked at her father, who was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief, beaming with pride. She looked at the screen, where the grid of the world was literally spelling out her happiness. She looked down at Tariq. "The probability of me saying no," Lydia choked out, her voice wet with emotion, but loud enough for the microphone to catch, "is statistically impossible." "Is that a yes?" Tariq grinned, the hope breaking through his composure. "Yes," Lydia shouted, pulling him up. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, and kissed her. The room exploded. It wasn't just polite applause this time. It was a roar of cheers, whistles, and thunderous ovation. Even Ms. Kincaid was seen openly weeping, clapping her hands. Outside, the Chicago skyline seemed to flare brighter, fueled not just by the new generator, but by the sheer, undeniable force of a second chance at life. Far away from the champagne and the celebration, in a greasy diner off the New Jersey Turnpike, a man named Gareth wiped down a sticky table. He looked older, tired. His expensive suits were long gone, sold to pay legal fees. The television above the counter was playing the news. And in a stunning turn of events, the math whiz Waitress has just become the fiancée of Sheikh Tariq Al-Fayed. Gareth froze. He stared at the screen, watching the woman he had tormented, the woman he had called invisible, standing on top of the world, wearing a ring made of stardust. "Hey, buddy," a trucker shouted from a booth. "You gonna clean this table or stare at the TV all night? I got a complex order here." Gareth looked at the trucker. He looked at the TV one last time. He sighed, the sound of a man who finally understood he had been the variable in the error all along. "Coming," Gareth muttered. He turned away from the screen and went back to work, fading into the background, invisible at last. And that is the incredible story of Lydia Bennet. It reminds us that intelligence, worth, and dignity are not defined by the uniform you wear or the job you hold. The world is full of invisible people, servers, janitors, drivers, who possess brilliance that goes unnoticed simply because no one bothers to look. Lydia's story teaches us a powerful lesson about karmic justice. Those who judge others based on status, like Gareth and Arthur, eventually fall, while those who maintain their integrity, even in the shadows, will eventually shine. If you enjoyed this story of justice and romance, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. Do you think you could have solved the Sheikh's puzzle? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.